there definitely was some, some seeing through and seeing the potential in real estate and things like that. It wasn't like a genius decision. It definitely was eager to get out there and start to, be able to make an income and to get somewhere in my life. So I think, well, it worked out great in retrospect. If I'm giving advice to someone in that position, I'm going to say, unless you have something really, really good going, don't just pick up and leave. 2 years is a short period of time. There's a lot of things you can do while you're in school to start to get yourself on the right track.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm here with my co-host, John Cohen. How we doing, bud?
Doing good. Crazy week 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We have, but no, we're hanging in there, just rolling.
Yeah, this week's been pretty slow.
Yeah,
we're in waiting mode.
Yeah, just waiting for signed contracts. Hanging in there, taking over a property. Just nothing crazy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So pretty good week to do some podcasts.
It was.
We should have been launched today, but we had a minor hiccup with some audio. So hopefully we'll be officially launched tomorrow, October 11th. So this one will probably come out in about 3 or 4 weeks, give or take. So, but with that said, I'm super pumped to have on our guest. He's a really good guy, similar age to me, has a pretty interesting story about how he got involved and what he's done to get to where he is. So I'm pretty happy he's going to be here to share. With that being said, Dylan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it and excited to be on the show.
Awesome. So why don't we just dive right in? Give us a little bit of your background, how you got into real estate, kind of your journey, where you ended up and how you got there.
Sure. Well, in the grand scheme, I'm young and relatively new to the space as a whole, but I have a great team around me, and definitely in the last 18 months we've made a whole lot of progress here. So my story was I moved out when I was 20. I'm 25 now. Moved out when I was 20 years old to California in pursuit of getting involved with real estate investing. A lot of my family grew up, worked on Wall Street in New York, and I kind of saw that being the path for me for a long time. Read a lot of personal growth books, a lot of entrepreneurship books, and kind of brainwashed myself into doing things differently, going more against the grain. And I saw real estate as being a great vehicle that seemed to be more of a proven path to being able to one day get into my own form of business. So I moved out to California, knowing very little. Started to work for a real estate investment and education group. For 3 years there, I was the youngest sales manager there, working 65, 70 hours a week. A lot of great influences around me. So I really, number one, got myself in the habit of working hard, and not only working hard on my job, but working on myself outside of work. I think it was just an overall great place for me to just absorb, the culture and then kind of the growth mindset that was going to help me in the long run. Learn sales communication, learn about real estate. I saw guys in all different aspects of the real estate business, single family, multifamily, buy and hold stuff, flipping, you talk about retail, syndication. And after spending time and researching all the different aspects of real estate, different sectors of commercial real estate, it became apparent to me that there was some serious opportunity involved in multifamily real estate, and specifically the world of multifamily syndication. So I basically did everything I could to get my hands on all the information I could get my hands on early on, and studied for, probably a period of about 18 months before I'm really catching much traction at all. But 7 days a week, online education books, mentors, and I was fortunate to, get in touch with a lot of people that had been making some good progress on their business and learn about what they're doing. You guys, included. I spoke to Vinny Chopra, was a good, huge mentor of mine early on. He's done several $100 million in syndications, so I learned a whole lot from him as far as like the overall framework. Got my first deal after, again, about probably 18 months of researching and working full time. I made the leap of faith moving out to the Southeast from San Diego because I wasn't a big fan of the West Coast markets. I saw a lot of potential in the Southeast. Shortly after landing there, I actually, ironically got my first deal in Troy, New York, 21 units, which was where I went to college. So I, somehow life goes full circle, ended up doing my first deal out there, got, with a couple of buddies of mine, Just very simple deal, but a great one to get under my belt, increase my belief levels. And well, I was in Atlanta, started taking massive action in terms of just building a network, building a base, placing a lot of offers, a lot of rejection. I felt like I, made the leap right before the market got, to one of its highest points, and was just getting smacked down left and right for a long time. And, but nonetheless, that's just a part of, the space and what it takes to get involved. And then, fortunately I had been in contact with many know Jake and Gino from the podcast with Wheelbarrow Profits, but the group here with Rand Partners, Jake, Gino, and our partner Mike, I had linked up with these guys as I was very good friends with Josh, who was helping them build out their education platform. One day went up to visit with Jake after, him and Gino came and spoke at one of the meetups in Atlanta. We had a great conversation, took the wakeboard out on the lake, and just got into some creative, some creative ideas. And we saw a fit that, they had built a really great business with, vertically integrated, but all using in-house capital, but more of the long-term buy and hold mindset and process in place. And I was eager to work hard and give the syndication thing my all. And we saw that just an overall good fit where I could, come in and help with the additional bandwidth, help build out the systems for working with the investors, for warming them up, for keeping the marketing in place, for doing some of the asset management. And since then, we've done, I think it's about 50 million in acquisitions. We've done, 3 large syndications across the board. I've done 6 transactions total in multifamily at this point. I think it's a little bit over 600 doors. We're 3 non-syndications, 3 syndications. So gotten a good feel for kind of different ways of being able to get into the space and the differences between the two, because there's a big difference between the two and the way you have to, manage the assets and the way you're going to underwrite the deals, things like that. So a little long-winded, but that's overall my story.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's what I was looking for, because we obviously have known each other for a little while now, and I kind of know your story, and I think it's really interesting. Can you actually touch on, because you mentioned it, but I don't know if anybody caught the timeline, college and the choices you kind of made there and the route you went?
Yeah. So I did 2 years in school. I went to SUNY Albany for 2 years. I did good in school for the most part, but I was definitely just going out a lot, partying a lot. And it was just, I made a lot of friends, so my
partying at Albany, that
doesn't go hand in hand.
Yeah. I think if you go to SUNY Albany, you're probably, like I was at the time, just looking for what's the biggest party school, right, in New York, and wound up at Albany, and enjoyed the time there. But there was just kind of a turning point for me where I hit a wall and I realized that this wasn't getting me to where I want to go, both professionally and on just the lifestyle and the habits. I just think it was just a downward spiral. So while I, looked good on paper, I was getting okay grades, I just, I was not setting myself up mentally for success. So for me, I made a huge leap in going out to California, knew practically no one out there. But I, for me, it was a chance to just almost like recreate myself, isolate myself, focus on myself for a few years, and, did just that. And I think it, is one of the best decisions I ever made.
For me, that's incredible, because I know when I think back to when I was 20 years old, and I'm 27, just as reference, I don't think I would have ever had the self-awareness or wherewithal to just say, hey, this isn't working for me, even though if it, it looks like it's working on paper and as of, at face value, to have the balls basically to just say, hey, especially if you know my mom, to just kind of step back and say, hey, this isn't working for me. I've got to do something that 99% of kids in that situation aren't doing.
Yeah.
And to do that, I think for me, I wanted you to share that, because I think it's incredible. And I don't think it's a conversation that enough people are having. I think it's starting more, is college worth it? But I just think it's incredible that you were able to do that, and to now have that track record of success to, a good degree, I think is incredible. And it just shows other people that, there's more than one way to skin a cat, for sure.
I agree. No, I was going to say, I think that it goes along with the trend though, right? A lot more kids think they can do it without college. I'm not saying college is good or bad, because we could have a whole nother conversation with that. But I think what you did was something that, most 20-year-old kids they think they can do it and they want to go create an app. It's a little different than realizing you're in I'll quote you, not that you weren't in a downward spiral, saying I got to isolate myself from everything. That's a totally different approach than, I'm going to smoke some pot and drink some beer and I'm going to create an app. That's where I think, it differs, because I have a whole nother feeling about 20-year-olds. I'm only 32 for reference, but we have a couple of younger kids in the office, and there's sometimes they, I love them. They're good at what they do. They've helped, but they bring up some shit, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, but to understand that you wanted to, reinvent yourself is, I think, of the key word. I think anyone listening should hear that. That was a perfect thing to do. It's hard to reinvent yourself in your element, but if you get up and go, you're a totally different person. And if you have the right head on your shoulders, that's going to be, it's probably one of the, reasons why you're as successful at where you are today at such a young age.
Yeah. Well, I will say, just looking back in reflection, I at the time too, it was tough because I faced, rejection from my family. Of course, my family wanted me to stay in school. They wanted me to finish up. I faced a lot of rejection from my friends. I was actually president of the fraternity the year before I left. So I had, a big group of people that I was connected with, and it was tough to say goodbye to everyone, early on in the process when everyone was expecting me to finish up in that time period. And truthfully, looking back, it's not like it's a decision that I thought I was super smart to make. I think there was definitely a lot of naivety going into that at the same time, because I was young, I was hungry, I was eager to make something of myself. And I felt like, I had gotten into the mindset of just, I'm taking on more student loans, I'm not making any money for the next 2 years. And I felt at the time, at 20 years old, 2 years feels like eternity, right? Mm-hmm. So there definitely was some, some seeing through and seeing the potential in real estate and things like that. It wasn't like a genius decision. There definitely was eager to get out there and start to, be able to make an income and to get somewhere in my life. So I think, it worked out great in retrospect. If I'm giving advice to someone in that position, I'm going to say, unless you have something really, really good going, don't just pick up and leave. 2 years is a short period of time. There's a lot of things you can do while you're in school to start to get yourself on the right track. So you live and you learn.
In the 100, why San Diego?
That was more of just the whole lifestyle by design aspect. I think I was living in New York my whole life. So I just got to a point where I wanted to get out, live by the beach. And it was a beautiful place. It had nothing to do with the real estate environment out there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny you brought that up, because we had Anton Martel on in like one of the earlier episodes, and he started in college as well. But instead of dropping out and going full in, he changed all his classes to night and did it all during the day. So I think it's really important that you brought that up. That it's not one end of the scope or the other. There's a whole scale in between of where you can fall, and I think he's a perfect example of falling in that scale where he sacrificed other things, but he still continued to go to school. And that was, at the time, the right path for him. Switching gears a little bit, talk to us a little bit about moving to, I guess actually I'm really curious about the decision to move to Atlanta, because I think that's one of the bigger things. A lot of people want to buy out of state. I never hear anybody really talking about willing to move to a place to buy real estate in that area. And now you're in Knoxville, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So again, another big risk in going for it. I think there's kind of a pattern with the two, right? For me, it was moving out to California to get into real estate. And I think I had put myself in a position that I was, making a good income, and I was around people that I was learning a whole lot from in the time period I was in San Diego. But I hit a wall where I started to feel more as if I was a trained monkey, if that makes sense, right? Kind of in the W-2 job, where I felt I had probably about 90% of the entirety of the learning curve. And if I stayed there for another 10 years, I could see what that path looked like. And it wasn't something that got me excited. So I hit a point where I had a little bit of passive income. I had a duplex, a single family, and then I had some cash saved up. And I asked myself, would, even if I moved out to Atlanta to get more boots on the ground, to be more full-time in this, one, do I have enough money to be able to survive? I'm young. I don't have, any dependents at the time. Do I have enough money there? And then two, looking back, if I didn't make any money, would I still be happy with the decision? Right. And eventually it got to that point where I picked up and left out to Atlanta just to be more boots on the ground, because It is difficult. I know a lot of people, want to promote the fact that anyone can do this business. Anyone can go out there and be successful. Just call brokers out of state, this and that. But if you have no money and you are living on the other side of the country, how are you going to be the one that finds the deal, right? Granted, maybe you know how to underwrite really well, but you have to get out there and actually be boots on the ground. And if you're required to be in an office setting for 6 days a week, you don't have any money to bring to the table. What was I contributing, right? No matter how much I learned, there was very, very little I was contributing because I couldn't contribute time, I couldn't contribute money, and I couldn't contribute a local presence, which are oftentimes 3 large things that everyone contributes in early on in the space to get out there. So for me, it just was more of a decision of freeing up my time, relocating to have more of that local presence. I saw a lot going on in the Atlanta market. It's kind of a good central point for a lot of the Southeast markets. And then just the aspect of the capital I knew from the get-go was something that while I had some money saved up when we're dealing with multi-million-dollar properties, I'm not going to be able to work a couple more years and save that up to get there. I knew I was going to have to start off with some form of syndication.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's incredible.
I know and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but everyone says you can do it with no money.
Yeah.
But you are telling the truth. And we have a monthly meetup we started in 2016, and for the first year and a half, it was you can do it. You can do it. Trust me, you can do it. And I wasn't selling anything. We're not selling a coaching program. We're not doing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It was truly, I believe that you can do it. Then there was like a switch in my head that just said, that's not going to fucking happen. Tell these people the truth. Like, you want me to be the gasoline to the fire and say you can do it, and then you're going to be analysis paralysis for 24 months,
Yep.
But the God's honest truth is that you need money, you need time, and you have to have a local presence. And if you don't have money and you don't live in the market and you don't have time, you don't have anything, and your value is so small. Not saying you can't get a deal done that way, but it's most likely not going to happen. So understanding that and realizing that and making another big move from San Diego to Atlanta to understand that you either had you had the education, now you got to be the local presence, and you had a couple dollars. I think that's what people have to realize. They have to understand that you have to bring something to the table, or what are you worth?
Yeah.
And even when it comes to the money, I think having just some sort of capital saved up, right? I don't expect anyone to go out there and save up several $100,000. Some people just aren't in a position where it's reasonable to save up more than $100,000 or so. But I think having say 50,000 set aside is going to go a long way, because when you're partnering with people and an earnest money deposit comes up, or you have to pay for some of the attorney fees and things to that effect, I think it just is not always a good look, especially if you're just, early on in your relationship or your partnerships. Having at least some level of capital and kind of keeping liquid, I would say don't just go out and invest all the money you have into a deal. If you're planning on getting into the syndication world specifically, keeping some kind of a liquid reserve on hand starting out is super important.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too, it's not just syndication where all that stuff applies. It's anything out of state, whether it's flipping, wholesaling land, flipping mobile homes. We, basically our story when we were looking at the stuff in Philly with you, it was we were trying to manage it out of state by driving, 2-5 hours every weekend. And then it was learned about out of state. There is a team and a framework in place that you are piggybacking off of that is doing all that local work. So if you can go down into that market and provide that service, that's a service a ton of people need right now, especially as out of state investing becomes more and more popular. The internet gets bigger and bigger. It's probably starting to turn into out of country investing now too. I'm sure there's more and more people from overseas that are doing similar things to what we're doing, whether it's on a large scale or a small scale. You can't do it without somebody local. If a toilet breaks, somebody's got to fucking fix it.
Yep.
Even if it's you have a direct line to a plumber and you're not going through a property manager, you still need that person there. So I think having, again, just the self-awareness to be like, all right, what can I offer to, other people, and recognizing that, okay, capital is not going to be the big one, which is a big one. So if you have it, there you go. But you don't have that time and proximity to the investments are huge.
Yep, absolutely.
All the time people ask, oh, how are you doing it out of state? And it's like, well, we are, but there's like a massive team you don't see behind it. It's like an iceberg. Yep. They're the tip, and the rest of it below the water is the team.
Yep.
Right.
how was it for you moving from, you went to Atlanta and then you started getting into the syndication game? What was the journey like getting into syndication, moving over to the Rand Partners side? Because I'm sure a lot of people that are going to listen to this, not live yet, so nobody's listened, but people that are going to listen to it are somewhat educated, thinking about getting into it, have thought about getting into it. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I'll break it into two parts. First, moving to Atlanta and going from having an income to not having an income. Well, logically, you can accept that and understand that. It's almost just wired in us that you're going to feel it no matter what. So it's a little bit tough. It was definitely tough at first, leaving the beach behind, leaving an income stream.
Yeah.
And just going to putting a ton of offers in, facing a ton of rejection all at once. But I knew what I was going in for, and it's just a matter of just constantly reminding yourself, what the big picture is. And I think that's always important in the beginning is really give yourself an 18 to maybe 24 month grace period of just going out there, taking action, getting rejection, not getting paid. There's many quicker ways to start making money. While syndication or real estate in general can be a great vehicle. There are quicker ways to go out there, but you have to be in it for the long run and be committed, not in it for just chasing the shiny object or dabbling. So that's just about the early stage, but I'll say stage 2, when you actually do start to get into the space, there's a whole lot of learning lessons, and it's exciting, right? There's a lot coming at you very quickly, and you probably hear it all the time, but there's no better way to learn than through actual tangible experience. When there's money on the line, when there's timing on the line, and actually working with all the different team members that are out there, whether it be your attorneys, your accountants, whether it's your loan brokers, the sales brokers, things like that. Just by communicating with all of these different team players, you just learn so much so fast. And I remember the first deal that we found was probably about 6 months after I began partnering with Jake and Gino and the team here with Rand. And we had looked at many properties at the time in all different markets here. We're based out of Knoxville, but we go within a 4 to 5 hour drive radius because we self-manage all the assets. So we try to kind of keep it close enough so we can keep a good pulse on it. And for us, the first deal we did was in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was off-market deal. And it was one of those days where we had 3 deals that we looked at. As Jake and I driving around all day long, getting discouraged. But we kept on pressing on. I remember by the time we finished the 3rd deal, we were almost questioning, do we want to even go see the 4th deal, right? Because you kind of have those days where you're just getting beat down all day long. But of course we pressed on and we're like, okay, let's check out the last one. You never know what's possible, right? And granted, these were deals that were coming to us because we were on site, not because we were calling from out of state, but because we were going to visit different states and different markets. And then finally we saw the last deal. And when the deals do happen, it feels the same as every other deal you look at. And then when it starts to make sense, it almost feels a little bit too good to be true because you've looked at so many deals at that point. You're almost like, what's wrong with this one? What do we miss? Right? That's usually the first question that goes through our head because, it all makes sense on paper. The area looks good. Everything else checks out. In that case, it was, there's a lot of upside, and there's, not really a professional management in place. And so far it's been, a huge success. We've got the income up about 50%, the gross income about 50% higher than where we started from, so it's been exciting to watch it happen. And I think getting into your first deal, whether it was your first, maybe it's a smaller deal, 21 units, or it's your first syndication. But I think there's always like that little voice in your head that's a little bit worried about what if this happens? What if this happens? Is it really going to work, right? Is it going to fall apart, right? And I think that as you start to actually see the progress and you actually see the income starting to come in, or you see your business plan starting to take shape and the property come to life, I think it really does so much for your confidence and your overall levels of understanding. And then as you see challenges and things like that come up, you learn just as much, right? And usually those are always great experiences. You have to be almost equally excited about the challenges and the struggles because, when you're going through that those are usually your best learning opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I'm curious to hear your kind of take too. Being brought into, the Jake and Gino Rand stuff. How much of an impact did that have on your knowledge and learning as you kind of, like you said, you spent 6 months before you found a deal.
Yeah.
How big of a factor, how important was that to, your knowledge base and, your experience and understanding?
Big time. I mean, these guys have done such a great job at building a foundation over the last 5 years, steadily, patiently, disciplined in the way that they've saved their capital, added value to properties, built out the management company, starting very grassroots. So I think the biggest shift for me was actually just getting that hands-on experience with Jake over Rand Property Management and seeing how we're running each of the properties, how the staffing's looking. We try to take more of an approach where we're educating the community managers to think a little bit more entrepreneurially, where they're, say, doing replacements on more of an ad hoc basis versus going out there and doing more of a cookie cutter. Every single unit's going to get the same exact upgrades. We're going to spend the same exact amount on every single unit. We're more so going in and we're determining what is the resident demand. A lot of our product is workforce housing. So we're catering to a specific level of resident, and there's some items that are not going to be necessary, some that are, and we want them to really be thoughtful in their approach. And I think just the amount of cost savings we've had from being very thoughtful and disciplined about how our replacements and our upgrades are going has been huge. I'm not saying that it's always better to self-manage. It's definitely not the case. I don't always encourage everyone to do it, but there's definitely a lot of advantages. There's pros and cons with everything. But I'd say, like, from a learning perspective, actually having that that experience, communicating with the property management company. We just got back from a big whitewater rafting trip, so we had about 50 people out there in North Carolina on a whitewater rafting thing. So just those kind of relationships, I've learned a lot from. More of like the actual boots on the ground, what goes on a day-to-day basis through the management team.
That's super insightful.
Yeah. I think that's very helpful to anyone listening.
Yeah. I think I draw parallels, Dylan, between you and I a little bit, obviously, because I came over under John and Don in 2016, and it was very similar. It was, 3 to 6 months kind of being brought up into the system. And for me, it was very similar. I don't think I would be nearly to where I am without the support and the experience leaning on someone else, which is why when I'm ever talking to someone and, someone brings up about, coaching versus joint ventures or doing their own deal, you guys might not want to hear it, but I tend to push people more away from coaching and more towards actually getting into something. Because like you said earlier, I think you'll learn by doing way more than you do by, hearing about it. And that was when I got brought in, I got tossed, some videos, and then it was come in and just start doing, and you'll just kind of pick it up as you go and you'll run with it. And I look back, on some of the shit I was doing back in 2016, and it's like a fucking toddler did it. It's not even close to accurate. So I think just being in that environment, provides so much. I'm curious, from your perspective.
No, I'm a tangible person too. So I don't discourage coaching. I encourage coaching when you already have a foundation. Because if you go pay a coach or a mentor or an advisor, it's going to be a financial commitment. And there's something to be say about keeping yourself accountable. But there's also the side that says if you're, let's say you're a librarian and you know nothing about real estate, and then you go pay a coach. Well, your learning curve is going to be like this.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a librarian and you buy a book and you read it and then you try it, then you hire a coach.
Nice.
I think that your learning curve goes from here to here.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, right? And when I first started, when I finally ended up paying a mentor, my mother was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And the only reason why I did is because my uncle, very good family friend, he had paid the same mentor, and he was actually a coach for him. So, and his sister used to babysit my mom. So she called him and she's like, "What are you getting my kid to do?" And he said, "You have nothing to worry about. He's gonna crush it." So my mom looked at me and she's like, "Whatever, do it. Go for it, right? I support you, but you don't." She comes from a school of thought where go work as the postman, go work as the mail boy, then go get coffee for people, then go sweep the floors, work your way up the ladder as opposed to trying to jump into the middle of the ladder. But I'm definitely someone that the candle's hot. I'm going to touch it and burn myself first. So I agree. I recommend anyone go find the right partner that's willing to give you the hands-on, tangible, tactile feel. You're going to learn more doing that than you are by a coach, a book, a program, or anything. When you put your own money into something or get brought into something where, God's honest truth, when we brought Chris on, I didn't know what we were doing. I was like, here, watch this video and then go underwrite this deal and then bring it to me. And I'm like, oh, no, this is wrong. Do it this way. Right. But, it wasn't that I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't know, I didn't know if we wanted an employee or not. I didn't know if we wanted someone else or not. All I know is that we had a lot going on and we could have used help. And there's so many of those situations out there, not unsimilar to you and Jake and Gino. And, if you find the right situation to get put into that, I think it works a lot better. So I agree with you. Totally. I do think that getting better and educating yourself is important, but I think if you have no background whatsoever, I don't think you're going to get as much out of any coaching platform, education, self-betterness, whatever that looks like. I don't think you're going to get as much out of it unless you sort of have an idea it's what you want to do.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
And there's a lot of benefits too, just on that point. I think there's so many benefits to just reaching out to everyone early on, right? Just massive amounts of networking, calling anyone that knows anything about it and just picking their brain. That's usually how I learn best. If I want to get into something new, I want to get myself in front of experts, just start calling people up, picking their brains, learning about it. And then if you can find a way to collaborate, there's no way where you're going to have better alignment of interest, right? And I think it's always just don't be greedy on your first deal or your first transaction or anything in the beginning. Focus on experience over just purely your returns or what's in it for you type thing. I think if you can just stay focused on the big picture, the experience and the knowledge you'll have from partnering with someone with experience, even if you brought them in just to share their experience, would be worthwhile.
Absolutely. I think that's the most insightful thing. There's a $50,000 coaching program in one example. It's it's not what's best for me now, or, I want a 20% return. It's, just sit back and watch someone that knows what he's doing. I said when I first started, the best piece of advice I give anybody is, try and meet 30 new people in the business every month, because that's one person a day over the course of a year. You're going to meet 360 new people, 30 people a month, 30 times 12. You put 360 real estate contacts, whether it's a fix and flip or hard money lender or a new inexperienced person, you meet 30 new people and you pick all their brains. I guarantee you in 12 months, you'll know way more than you ever thought you could. Yep. And you probably have more experience than 95% of the people out there going to chase down wholesales and fix and flips and office space, whatever it is. But if you network and you pick the brains of people in the business, it's by far the best tool that's out there. And it's 100% free pending, paying for an event or buying a guy coffee or a dinner or something like that.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how many people won't ask, right? I've always been a believer. My dad always said, if you don't ask, you don't get type thing, right? And I've always been of that mentality where just don't be afraid to ask for it, right? Don't be afraid to ask for the help, make the phone call. Maybe starting in sales helped me a little bit because I had no fear of picking up the phone and calling anyone, whether it be broker or other investors, things like that. But totally you just have to realize that if you're making that call, you're already setting yourself apart from the other, 90%.
Yeah. And if you think it's scary to pick up the phone and call another fellow investor, write $1.5 million check and buy a value add deal of, 1970s built C-class asset. Like if you can't pick up the phone, there's no way you're going to get over the challenges, on that. So, start small, right? And you're right. I mean, I had a sales background also. So, the word no to me is whatever, I would do it anyway, but that's going to happen. And the real estate community, as big as it is, it's not that big. Mm-hmm. You bump into each other pretty frequently where it's like, oh, hey, look at this deal. Oh no, I know it. Or oh no, I know that guy too. It's a big world, but you step on feet pretty quickly. So it's, I'd like to think we're pretty friendly, right? For the most part, if someone calls you, you answer. Mm-hmm. And you get, if they're not going to give you the time of day, that's fine. Pick up the call and call the next guy on the list.
Yeah. And sometimes too, it's just the person you're calling just doesn't have the time right then.
Correct.
Or something's going on. So a lot of times it's just, try again in 6 months or 12 months and see where they're at. I'm curious about this. What was it like for you when Jake and Gina was moving from everything in-house capital to the syndication side? What were some of the challenges, the struggles, the things you guys didn't realize as a group, some of the learning stuff you guys encountered during that period?
Yeah, no, I love this topic and I'm glad you bring it up because there is a big shift. There's a big shift to how you're looking at the deals. to how you're managing the deals. I'd say number one, we'll start with how are you underwriting the deals? Multifamily, one of the interesting things about multifamily real estate as a whole is that it's very subjective, and a lot of it comes down to what is the overall cost of capital, right? What is our preference in terms of our returns, right? And
Yeah.
if you look at your own money, you might be okay with a 10% return where the guy down the road wants a 15% or someone else wants 20%, right? And everyone has a different level of risk tolerance. Some people are much more risk averse than others. So when buying in house, a lot of the times early on, I think it was a more linear thought process, very driven by cash flow, right? I think it was less of underwriting based on where can we exit in 5 years from now. It was more, how do we get this up to, say, a double-digit cash flow, or where is the cash flow going to be in a few years? Where might we be able to refinance this? And is this an asset we want to hold for the next 20 plus years? Because the majority of the portfolio that's initially in place is intended to be held for the long term. Is that going to be the case? Time will tell. But that was how that was more of the thought process going in. And then you're also going to look at things differently. You're not going to go and budget a heavy CapEx budget, improvement budget. If it's your own money, you might say, let's just reinvest the cash flows, right? That extra 20 grand out of pocket is actually going to be felt by me, versus in a syndication, raising an extra 20,000 might be a wiser move, or maybe it's an extra 200,000 or 2 million if you have a heavy improvement, right? But I'm just saying, you're going to try to leverage as much as possible. You might use community banks. You might be willing to take on more recourse debt if it's your own money, just to try to get the maximum leverage and squeeze every dollar, so that you can you basically limit the amount of cash into your pocket, so that you can do more deals, et cetera, right? Now, that's on the buy side. With syndications, you're going to budget usually the entire improvement budget up front, maybe even a little bit of a buffer, because the last thing you want to do is have a capital call with your investors. And typically on the statements, you're not reinvesting a ton beyond maybe 350 or 400, 500 a door back into your CapEx improvement budget. So you usually want to have the majority of that raised up front. You're usually going to be a little bit more conservative on your leverage. You might be more likely to go after non-recourse debt. You're probably able to do larger deals, which allows you to mostly go after non-recourse debt. And then in terms of your overall strategy, you may be more IRR driven. You may be more thinking, where are we going to be on a 5-year timeline? What's going to be our exit strategy? Obviously, there's evergreen funds and long-term syndications, but I think that across the board, most people are doing more of the buy, fixed, and sell model. So you're going to think about what is our exit strategy, and then you might even think differently. Instead of going for maybe like a super long-term Fannie Mae loan with yield maintenance or a HUD loan, you might go after something with the step down, something with a shorter prepay, or just a shorter term as a whole when it comes to the financing side. So that's number one on the buy side. And then number two on the management side, which has been exciting. I think we've made a ton of progress on this, throughout this whole year, has been just how are we reporting? When it's your own money, you can be a little bit more lax with, knowing what the categories are, your GL codes on your accounting software. We use Appfolio, so we kind of know like what things are bucketed into what at first. But when you're reporting to investors and you're sending them T12s, you want to be very disciplined with what's falling under repairs and maintenance, what's actually CapEx. You don't want to have some CapEx things running under OpEx at times and things like that, right? So you have to get very disciplined, because you need to make sure that the T12s are telling a very crystal clear story to the investors, so that when you're sharing cash flow statements and so on, it's reflective of that. And then it's also, how are you managing your CapEx now that you are raising an improvement budget versus reinvesting cash flows more often? How are we going to reinvest the CapEx? So, what's our CapEx budget going to look like? And then just what is our reporting going to be, right? We're doing 3 monthly webinars when we first take over an asset, then doing a quarterly webinar, and then in addition to that, we're sending out monthly statements to the investors to just create a good investor experience and show transparency. But a lot of that stuff, as you guys know very well, just managing the investors takes a whole lot of time, and even just the process, closing, like I said, 3 non-syndicated deals, 3 syndicated deals. It feels like a whole lot more work when you're syndicating the deal, because you're dealing with creating the investor package. You're dealing with that, answering a ton of questions, right? We've had deals where we've had 50 investors on a deal. So there's just a ton of investor questions, a ton going on. You have all these custodians sending you paperwork to fill out and all kinds of things moving all at once, in addition to your due diligence, in addition to working with the attorneys to close the deal, in addition to working back and forth with the seller and so on. So that's, I would say, some of the big challenges I've noticed, or changes.
Yeah, in-house sounds nice.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you kept talking about that, we have a couple of in-house deals, and I say it all the time. If I had an infinite supply of money, I would never raise another nickel. You don't have to answer to anybody. If it's like, you know what? Hey, let's take a distribution. Hey, we have to fix this. Let's just put the cash flow. Let's just take that and reinvest it. There's no answering to anybody, and there's something to be said about that. I mean, we're raising money right now for 600 units, and I love it. It's awesome. But there's a part of me that says, having $500 million in real estate with investors, give me $1 million deal to myself that I can go to bed at night, and I don't have to answer someone when the vacancy is 94 and it's supposed to be 95. There's no question. It's like, yeah, listen, it's fine. But I'm not recommending one way or the other. But in-house, in-house capital and personal deals. After this, I was gonna go grab my partner and say, hey, how much money we have? Let's go buy our own deal. It just makes life easier. And that's the truth. That's the God's truth. Anyone listening to this deal, syndication's great. Buying the deal's great. I'm not saying which one's better, but if you don't want any headaches, buy your own property.
And that's what I always tell people, is that this is an active business. There's no other way of looking at it. When you're syndicating deals, it's an active business. You're active with your asset management. You're active with your acquisitions. You're active with your dispositions. You're active with your reporting. So there's so much going on. So anyone that's looking for just the financial freedom, which means making just maybe a modest income, if financial freedom to you is making a very modest income, having some passive income to live off of and hang out by the beach all day, syndication may not be the vehicle. Or maybe it's syndication for a short period of time, and then it's finding ways to go acquire your own assets. But syndication can be also very rewarding because you're helping a lot of people get great returns on their deals. You're building a ton of relationships. You're building communities. It's the excitement of having a lot of deals going on. It's being able to work on larger deals and projects that you might not be able to do on your own. So there's a lot of pros and cons. If you are okay with excitement, or if you're okay with the putting in a lot of work and you enjoy kind of the thrill of doing more deals and doing large projects and helping out investors and going through the highs and the lows, then it's a great vehicle. But I think it's always getting clear and having the self-awareness of what do I want with my life, and not just assuming that because you're listening to a lot of podcasts and you see a lot of people doing syndication, that this is your key to financial freedom. I think it's knowing what you're signing up for beforehand.
I agree. I think that people don't work, working backwards and understanding what you're getting yourself involved with. When I was grabbing a cup of coffee before he started this, and I ran into someone I know, and he said, "Oh wow, I'm happy for you." He's an older guy that I know, and "I'm so happy for you, doing great." I'm like, it looks a lot better than it actually is, because I love it, and there's I'm not doubting that at all. I'll do it for it's the best thing in the world. But you're right, the thrill of giving someone a 12, a 20, a 30, a 40% return, whatever that looks like, when that guy's getting 3% returns, is the best feeling in the world. When you sell a deal and you chunk a check to your investor and they're like, "Oh shit, that's awesome." No better feeling. And that's, forget my pocket, forget Toro, forget me personally, or whatever. But there's something to be said. A buddy of mine the other day was like, hey, can I borrow money for a little bit? And he's an investor in a deal, and he has a lot of capital in the deal, and he needed a couple bucks. So I said, hey, here you go. He's like, "Oh, I'll pay you back right away." I said, "Don't worry about it. You're invested in the deal, so I'm going to get my money back one way or the other." But being able to help out when someone needs it is so much more rewarding to me than making $1 million. That's great, but being able to give someone a return that they did not know existed or did not have the opportunity before, that's the reason behind syndication. Sometimes I don't like that word because visions don't align. We go into it all the time, but I think that that's the part of syndication that you brought up that I think that that's the reason to do it.
Don't like the word of syndication, or
yeah, the word syndication is I don't love it, but I think building a community, having investors, being able to give back, that's the part of the business that's amazing. When a guy asks you what a cap rate is 18 times, then I want to blow my brains out. But be that as it may, I think you touched on that, just awesome points that, it's a full-time job. There's no downtime. There's no downtime when you're the one in charge. You're worried about investors, you're worried about the asset, you have a property manager, there's a million moving parts. And if you want freedom and financial freedom and a check every month, maybe you don't want to be a syndicator. Maybe you want to go buy a duplex, a 500 unit, whatever you have the ability to. But I think that's a very important part that people don't talk about, that side of the business.
No. Yeah, I think you got to understand what you're looking to achieve. And like you said, reverse engineer it back into what you want to do and figure it out. There's 50, 60, 70 different ways to invest in real estate. There's dozens of assets and dozens of ways within those assets to invest in them. Just got to figure out which one's best for you. And it goes back to risk return and what you're willing to do and how much time you're willing to put in. You want to retire on a beach, you're never going to do syndication. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
If anybody's telling you that, they're just flat out lying to you. So, I think what you said, just hits it right on the head. Question: how do you guys choose whether to do a deal in-house or to syndicate?
And be ready, because we asked Jake and Gino the exact same question.
Yeah. So we're gonna expose.
Well, we don't always have to have the exact same answer, right?
We're gonna cut that part out.
But no, I think that it's as a group, right? I think we all put our heads together and see what makes sense. But I think it's important for us, because it is kind of a delicate thing when you have investors. They might say, "Oh, well, do you only do the good deals in house, or you just?" And it's definitely absolutely not the case. So out of the last deals, one was because it was a small deal that would not have made any sense at all to syndicate. One was because it was an extremely hairy deal, and we're brand new to syndication, and it was about a $4 million deal, and it was not going to see $1 of cash flow for at least the first 12 to 18 months. So if that was our second syndication, that would have been a nightmare to try to report on. And it's taken longer than we expected and more money than we expected, as it usually does, right? So it's been a process to get out of. I still think we'll do well, but it's just in terms of like presenting that to investors on the first one or second deal syndicated would have been very, very difficult. And then another one was an owner, totally seller finance deal. So there's just no need for the additional equity. So I would say more often than not, for me personally, I love syndication. I'm very focused on providing great returns to the investors. And I think as a group, we are focused on just building that out for our investors, more so than we are just growing our own capital or net worth right now, right? I think that building our track record in the space comes first right now. So anything we can do to get the investors the strongest returns and start to really build more relationships with investors, continue to grow the base and continue to grow the confidence that we have from the investor base, I think is the priority. And I think moving forward, we won't see a lot of deals being done in-house. Maybe you'll see one a year, maybe a smaller one that we can just get, maybe reap the benefits of depreciation from for ourselves as real estate professionals. But I think more often than not, what we'll probably be doing, I would say, more than 80% of the deals will be syndicated. And the answer is definitely not because it's, a better deal or anything like that is why we do it in-house. It would just be for reasons that it was just either too small or not really needed at all. So
such a diplomatic answer.
Yeah.
It's true.
No, but it, as diplomatic as it was, I literally was hoping you didn't say one of those reasons, because I was gonna be like, oh, what about this? And I was gonna try and be that asshole and throw a wrench in and try and throw a wrench in it. But a small deal you can't syndicate. There's just no one's gonna make money, realistically speaking. Then a super heavy lifting one, there's so much risk associated. Whether it's your 500th deal syndicated or your third or your second, there's a lot of risk associated with that, and that risk you want to take off the table for your investors. We know we've done it both ways. But no, that you're 100% right. I mean, it's just, at some point your capital runs out and you're going to take your money and put it into the deals that, it support. Now, as diplomatic as it was before, those are the reasons why. So if an investor is not, and God's honest truth, let's call a spade a spade. If an investor is not happy with it, he can invest with somebody else. That's life. But no, those are you guys rehearsed this with Jake and Gino. Yeah. You'll also be seeing things.
Well, we've been asked more than once.
Of course, no, it's an odd, and that's what I think I asked Gino the first time. Yeah. I said, you guys buy a heavy lifting deal instead of refining it, sell it to your investors, right? Like why not? But no, it's a fair question, and as a both sides of the coin operator, someone that Jake and Gino built their platform with their own money, that's a very honest question that an investor should ask. And if an investor is not asking it, that probably leads you to start asking that guy questions, because it's why us if you don't know who we are, and understanding both parties, who you guys are, who we are, who your investors are. That's a very important part that most groups probably just give me your money, we'll take it. But that's not, we do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before, but the investor sponsor syndicator relationship definitely goes two ways. It's not just, it's not just sponsor vetting, investor vetting sponsor. I mean, there's definitely a feeling the other way, and you definitely want to work with some people more than others.
Correct.
Definitely agree. I think when you're building relationships with investors, for anyone listening that is in the process of doing so, I think it's always you really, it's almost the less you sell, the better. I think it's just being transparent. Hey, here's who I am. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to spend time. Here's what we've done in the past. Here's some things that maybe our strengths. Here's some things that you may consider our weaknesses. Just putting it all out there on the table. And I think more than anything right now, I think what the investors need is trust and understanding on who they're working with. So you just want to be just an open book to them. And if you feel like you're having to drag them across the finish line, telling them why they should invest, I think that's just going to lead to some kind of resentment or a tough time. So I think you just need to make sure you're just fully transparent.
Agreed.
Yeah, 100%. So what are you guys working on now? What's the future hold?
So lately, we're just right now we have a big event coming up next weekend. So it'll be after the show comes out. But we have Multifamily Mastery 3, which is the third live event Jake and Gino have held, which is going to be about 500 or so people at the Gaylord in Orlando. So we're pretty pumped for that. It's clearly we've got a lot going on in terms of just prepping for the event, marketing, things like that. We've been steadily looking for the next project, but that's always, it's always a process. It's ebbs and flows. We closed on one probably about a month back. And since then we've looked at, not in just the last month, but we've looked at over 100 deals ongoing between our due diligence on that one and over the last month or so. And nothing's really scratching out for us as of recent, but that's just, nature of the game. And I think for us, it just right now we're using the time to refine our systems. We've actually been working just, a lot on, like I talked about over, some of the asset management stuff over the last year, still in the learning process and just constantly finding ways to improve either our investor communications, some of our marketing efforts in terms of just putting our brand out there and creating content, which, you're leading the way with, Chris. I definitely have to give you a shout out on that. Inspired
We're trying.
For sure. And things like that. So, using the downtime, there's always a ton of work to do and things to improve on. I'm sure we'll have something up soon.
Awesome. Where can people get a hold of you?
People can reach me. You can email me. And it's Dylan, DYLAN at Rand, RAND Partners LLC.com. Or you can reach out to me on social media at Dylan Marma, MARMA.
Awesome. Fantastic, man. I think you gave a ton of insight, touched on some really good stuff. So thank you for that.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Take care.